Oh, Rubicon's been fantastic. I think that, while we're in classes with the guys most of the time during the week, one of the things we're able to do here is we're actually able to interact with them. And well, once you get to meet somebody in person, talk with them in person, the communication bandwidth increases. So this has been great. The people that I've met that are also trading, that I'm also in the Rebel Pit with, and we are exchanging text messages back and forth, the camaraderie is just excellent. So I recommend anytime they have an in-person event, you got to come and attend.
Join us this December in Miami, Florida for Market Rebellion Live.
And here we go. Again, for those of you watching, the guy jumps out of his seat right before we come on air, and then he kicks out his cord. It was like a Saturday Night Live skit or something. He kicks out the cord, and the next thing you know, we're wondering. Jared and I are like, "Hey, where did he go? What the hell's he doing?" And
I left this back on the other side of the room, Pete. I had to go get it.
Well, it's important. We know that. That's how you start.
That's right. Have you ever seen a John Wayne movie being made where they didn't have one of those?
No.
You know what we got to do, Pete? Maybe I'll have to get one of these for you. These now have electronics. They have LEDs built in.
Oh, I like that.
So you don't have to write on it with chalk, which I don't have. I got to find some chalk.
You should get some chalk. That would be great.
I should. And for all of our friends at Universal, oh
boy, howdy.
All right. Welcome to the Rebel's Edge. I'm John Najarian. He's Pete Najarian. Jared is handling all of the problems that come up during the show.
Robin Quivers.
And he's, by the way, also told me, Pete, that we still think we have 2 tickets. And I'd encourage anybody who wants to come to Miami, December 8th through 10th. So that's next Thursday, Friday, Saturday, folks, because we do a tour of the harbor on the yacht on Saturday. For anybody that wants to come down for those 3 days, you can go to marketrebellion.com/Miami. We know we have 2 tickets. Sometimes people, for one reason or another, can't make it. And so they'll basically throw them back to the sales department and say, hey, if somebody can use these, let me know. So might be 4, it's 2 for sure tickets, and makes a great gift.
Well, John, on top of all that, I got a busy week, man, because I'm going to be going to Kelsey Ballerini and her husband are going to be performing. We, from the Naples Wine Festival last year, where they raised, as they always do, an unbelievable millions of dollars. I think in the 20 years, John, I think they've raised something like $270 million. Don't quote me on that, but something close to that. And we were part of that. I had too many cocktails in me and I started raising up my deal. And next thing you know, I got the concert. So it's going to be a private concert down there in Florida. So
a private concert.
Yeah. There's only 15 of us. How about that? I'm not going to tell you what it cost though. Although I got to tell you, I got a pretty good number last year, John, when they raffled me off, as a matter of fact. And that's the second year in a row that they did that. And I think it was, I don't know, 160 or something like that. So, and that's with a K at the end. So it gives you an idea how much these guys raise.
To have lunch with you, Peter, is that for dinner?
Well, it's to have lunch, possibly dinner, and maybe a little tequila. Who knows?
That's a whole weekend, or just
it could. Well, it could lead into a lot more. I could tell you that. And it has, because that's the second year. I did one already, and it was great though. Yeah.
All right. We're going to jump into the 1 minute macro. We've already got it queued up on the screen, folks. 1 minute macro, because that's all it's worth. All right, Pete, December 4th, next week, we have an OPEC meeting. I think a lot of what is going on in the market will hinge on that. What if they cut? What if instead of opening it up bigger, because $74, $75 a barrel, they might decide to cut? and that could send prices popping to the upside, prices of stocks down.
Yeah, I think that's a very important one, John. I think also tomorrow with Powell speaking and what we were looking at yesterday, which you and I already defined that with the 1 minute macro yesterday, but I think it lingers into today as well. All of what's going on and what's been going on in China certainly has some effects. And you know what? That deceleration at the end of the day of the markets, absolutely amazing. Just to watch that moving from the upper left to the bottom right was not a great move, 500 points to the downside for the Dow, and every one of the major indices down, I think about 1.5%. So a brutal day yesterday, a little bit better day today, but that's it for macro.
All right. That's all it's worth, folks. 1 minute macro. We don't waste your time. Let's talk about Generac, Pete. Speaking of wasting time, somebody named Sari Brodisky, I guess, is an analyst over at Jefferies, downgraded Generac. They make, of course, generators for electricity because they say bi-directional charging EVs, meaning if you have one of those new Ford Lightnings, F-150s, you can plug it into your house and send electricity in instead of just taking it out. How many of those have they sold? Just like this many? I mean, you can sell all you can sell, but how many have they made, Pete? I think this is a bad call.
Oh, it's a terrible call. They also cut the price target, John. The whole thing is absolutely ridiculous. I think, you know, Generac's got their own issues. They've got a lot of debt, John, but I think that the biggest issue that I see facing them right now, quite honestly, is labor. They talked about that, John. They talked about the fact that they have a labor shortage. They don't have enough installers right now, which tells me demand is there. They need the labor side of this to come back. And that's something that, you know, everybody's dealing with that in some way, shape, or form. It seems like in the markets that we have, do they have enough labor to be able to do what they'd like to be able to do if they have demand? They got the demand. They just don't have enough. So I think that's something that actually is more of a positive than a negative. And this analyst said that's the craziest thing I've ever heard. It really is. I got to tell you, as a guy who has many Generacs and a lot of different houses that I've lived in, they're one of the greatest thing in the world. You need it, and it sucks down the energy. So if you think that truck is going to do anything other than maybe get your hairdryer ready, which, by the way, I don't need, it's pretty pathetic. That's a ridiculous thing.
Yeah, I agree, Pete. I mean, you know, some of the small Honda generators and the portable generators, you know, that you use for just a few hours, they can only run a small amount of things. Can you imagine trying to run either air conditioning, your freezer, any appliance of any significance beyond Pete's hairdryer? Yeah, I think this is a bad call. All right. So what about Pete, SI? Yeah. This is the bank, of course, that's been forever associated with cryptos because it's one of the banks that really understood what these guys were trying to do, how you take regular currency, fiat, and then send it over to a crypto exchange so that you can buy Bitcoin or anything else. Well, shares in that bank were down hard yesterday, down again in the pre-market today, but rallied back, which I thought was sort of impressive. This was exposure to BlockFi, which they say is minimal, Pete. And BlockFi, of course, filed for bankruptcy protection yesterday.
Yeah, I think it was a knee-jerk reaction, John, to sell it because of the fact of the BlockFi issue. They got much more issues than that going on. And because of that, John, that's why when you look at what the short interest is here, it is pretty massive. You're talking 17, 18% short. They've been right. They've been riding this thing for the entire ride down from $232 was the 52-week high, down now where it's close to $26 right now, I think, John, near the 52-week lows. I think that this is a stock that probably will continue to kind of find itself under pressure. And I think those shorts, until we start to see some of that clean up, maybe they walk away and say, you know what, we've had our run. It's been a great run, but I don't know if they're ready to say that just yet, John. I think there's still pressure on the bank.
Yep. I would still think, Pete, that this one and Coinbase still see a fair amount of pressure. So I'd be right there with you. As much as I like the guy, the CEO, because you and I spoke to him a couple different times last year, it's been a tough year for him this year. All right, Pete, tough year. Yeah. Billy, well, a good day, but a tough year. The stock was $67 at the highs, Pete, traded down to $8. And then they came out with quarterly results that were better than expected. But, you know, that bar, you could step over that bar. You don't have to jump over it, Pete. But daily active users, it's up over 90 mil, so that's a good thing. Would you buy Billy at this level, Pete?
Sold. Absolutely.
No is the answer, I guess.
Here's why. So it's up 21% or whatever, right, John? And it's off of those highs that it had. You talked about it already, $6-7. It went all the way down to 8. And here we are trading, what, 15, something close to that. Here's why I would sell it, though, John. They don't make money. This is a company that's been around a long period of time, and they struggle to make any money. And that's always been a problem for me. They reported a loss of 62 cents. Oh, well, that's better than losing 65 cents, which was expected. And so when I look at that, they beat on the top and the bottom, but the overall picture that I'm looking at right now with them is absolutely that they're a company that cannot and has not been able to make money. Maybe someday, but they haven't done it yet. And this quarter was a great example of exactly that. They beat, which was a 65 cents loss, and they did it with 62. But that's not good enough for me. I've got to see a mature company that actually can make some money. Looks like we might have lost John for the moment. So I'm going to jump on this next one, Hibbett. Now, Hibbett is an interesting stock. It's down about 12%. It's apparel retail. Their comp sales were up. Their inventories were up. And that's where the problem comes in. This is a company who's, when I look across all of retail, they might have the highest level of inventories right now that I have seen, 56%. So they miss on the top, they miss on the bottom, they got margin pressure. There's a lot of different things that they're having to face right now. It's not a great time for this company because they certainly are under pressure. It's cool sportswear and all the rest of that, but the free cash flow burn is bad. I don't like what we see there. When you look at the balance sheet, it's upside down. That's also a negative. So when I combine those, I just look at this as a company that's very, very difficult for me to say right now, hey, look, I want a piece of these guys. I think that this thing continues to go to the downside, and I see no reasons why I'd want to buy this name right now. John, I'll be back in just a second, but before we get to that, we're going to jump to the unusual options. We're just going to keep on motoring until we get him back. We will. But this is the problem sometimes with Puerto Rico. So I'm going to give you my unusual option. He'll jump in with his. I'm going to give you BABA. Now, we've been talking about Chinese stocks, but we've been primarily talking about a lot of the big sectors, right? The big ETFs. And we have some of that as well today. But for me, I wanted to see some of that individual option paper. Well, we're seeing a lot of it recently. As a matter of fact, we've had 5 different hits, separate hits, in the month of November, which is obviously ending today. We're going to be 5 different hits. Now, they started at $72 a share. Here we are at $80 a share. Those buyers, which they were all buyers of calls, have done pretty well on this big rise. Today, we got a buyer of 6,000 of the December expiring 92 calls. So going up into the, out a little bit further, $1.20 for these as well. So with the stock trading 80, these are the 92s. It's going to have to make a heck of a move. Can it do that? Absolutely it can. And I'll tell you what, as you look back to yesterday, John, we had 2 separate hits as well. So it's good to see you back on there, but I like what's going on with BABA. I like this one enough that I actually am a participant in this one as well.
Well, yeah, Pete, I realized that I didn't turn off my VPN, virtual private network. And sometimes the broadcast will fight with the VPN. That's enough of an explanation for that. I turned the damn thing off. All right. Back, as far as unusual, Pete, I'm going with you with the Chinese stocks, but I'm going broader. Instead of just one stock, I'm going with K-Web because 15,000, that's 1.5 million because you put 2 zeros on the end of 15,000, 1.5 million share equivalent. December 30 calls. So it was trading just shy of 27, Pete, basically 26.70. So almost to 27. And they were buying these for about 50 cents, these calls. Cheap shot, but I'm buying something at the money right down there at about that 27 strike, Pete. I like the upside. It's new buying. We know that. How do we know? It occurred on the offer. That's one. Number 2, the open interest was only 11,800. So when you trade 15,000, even if 11,000 of those were short covering, the rest is open trade. So I like the trade, followed it in. Apparently people are pretty bullish that maybe there's a reopening coming in China, Pete.
Again.
Again.
Yeah.
Over and over again. All right, Pete, what about some NFL chat about some of the things going on there? I liked what I was seeing over the past couple days in both college and pro football, but you have a little bit more of a take back to our friends at the Denver Broncos, I think.
Yeah, we'll start off with that one, John. And I'll tell you what's really interesting about this is Russell Wilson, you and I called it. We absolutely called it.
No,
we said
you
this
called
is
it.
the most ridiculous Herschel Walker 2.0. This actually might be worse, John. It really could be, because they gave up a 1 and a 2, which first round and the second round last year, this past year, 2022. Next year, a 1 and a 2 again, and multiple players, 2 of which were first round draft picks themselves. So they did all of that to get Russell Wilson, right? And a $250 million contract. Here's some of the numbers. He's number 29 behind Taylor Heineke, John, in his rating. Now, Taylor Heineke's making $1.5 million this year. Russ, $49 million. How about that? Also, do you got to question a little bit about his teammate side of things, John? Because I don't know about you, but I don't remember the last time I saw a defensive player coming off the field, because their defense is good with Denver. The reason they stink is because the offense is the worst scoring offense in the NFL, with the quarterback that they gave a guaranteed $250 million to. So when you look at that, Mike Purcell comes running off the field and has a few words with Russell. Now, Russ not too happy about that, but you ever seen a quarterback back up that fast, John? He looked like he was in a scramble drill. He looked like he was looking at a guy who wanted to grab him by the neck and choke him, which I think he did, by the way. And I don't think he's the only guy on the team. I think a lot of those guys are looking at Russell saying, hey, look, you're a lot of talk. You're in front of the media. You got all these commercials. You and your wife are always out there doing this, that, and the other. But unfortunately, we need you on the field, and you can't produce on the field. 8 touchdowns and 5 interceptions is what he's got this year, John. They're scoring 14 points a game in a league that is absolutely, totally for the offensive side of football. So I don't know, John. What do you think? Can they turn this thing? Not this year, but can Russell Wilson actually be able to be a starting quarterback next year for the Denver Broncos, or do they start all over, get rid of the coach, get rid of Russ? What are they going to do?
Well, we both know they can't get rid of Russ, Pete.
Right.
They will get rid of the coach. They can't get rid of Russ because the only thing worse than this trade is having to pay him another $200 million to not even be there. So they got to hope that the kid's got some pride and that he comes in ready to play next year. That guy should be living in the film room with whoever the offensive coordinator is and figure out what the hell is wrong. Is it mechanics, or is it, a bad scheme, Pete, that everybody knows this is how a smaller quarterback, there are quarterbacks his size, the quarterbacks from Purdue that were his size have done quite well in the NFL, and they'll probably make their way to the Hall of Fame. This guy ain't making his way to the Hall of Fame. In fact, he's going out as a bust between the Super Bowl where he threw that interception, Pete, and this season. He's not going out as a legendary player at all, even though it looked like he might be one of those guys. I don't think he will be. What about college football here, Pete? Anything you got going on with that?
Not so much with college, John, but here's a play on words. You're wondering about Saturday. Well, I'm talking about Jeff Saturday. He's in over his head. Here's the problem. Nice guy. I mean, we all know that. Great football player. Peyton Manning center for many years. He's a Colt. He's everything that they wanted to. So they hire him as the head coach. A lot of guys are mad about that for a variety of reasons. But I was willing to look past whatever those reasons were to say, you know what? Maybe he can get it. And I thought at first maybe he got it, John. Their first game was against the Raiders. They won. What did he do? Well, he gave the ball to a heck of a running back, one of the best running backs in football. But last night, I'm watching the game. Now, everybody's going to be screaming about, hey, you know what? He completely lost track. He had 2 timeouts. They had this great drive at the end of the game to possibly get themselves into an overtime situation, all that kind of thing. And that was the chatter. That's what all the sports hacks, as I'll say, are saying about what's going on and what the problem is. I'll start at the beginning of the game. How about that, John? Their first series, what do? Incomplete pass. Matty Ice is way over the hill. And you and I talked about that many weeks ago about all these old quarterbacks that are still playing, getting a big check that aren't worth a damn. He's one of them. He's terrible. He absolutely can't move. He can't run. He can't get anywhere. He did have one scramble, so I shouldn't say he can't run. But you start off the game, you throw the ball opening, it's incomplete. Second one, you throw an interception on the opening drive. That's just Jim Dandy. You got one of the very best running backs in all of football sitting in the backfield there, and you're not going to run the ball. Jonathan Taylor had 6 carries total in the first half. Now, let me tell you, first drive, I could say, you know what? We're trying to surprise him. We're doing this. We're doing that, right? He comes out on the second drive. If he's not running the ball the entire time after that, I would have walked over to the offensive coordinator and said, hey, look, Bozo, this guy can't throw and this guy can run the ball. Give him the ball and let's run it downfield and put it down their throat. You know what they did in the second half, John, to get back into the game, to have a chance at the end? They gave him the ball 14 times. He ends up with 60 or 86 yards on the day. Why didn't they run the ball early in the game? It wasn't so much about the timeouts at the end. He totally screwed that up as well. Saturday's in over his head, and I think that unfortunately he had an opportunity to show that he could be that guy, but it turns out he's not that guy because they're a 4-7 team that's kind of probably be very lucky to win a couple more games.
Well, while I won't disagree, Pete, what really hurts is that the guy's been up in the press box and/or watching it from, Bristol, Connecticut, home of ESPN.
Yeah.
He's been watching from there. He hasn't been the guy that has to be on the sidelines, like you say. It's a lot easier for people to say, well, you got 2 timeouts, let's use them. Nobody's going to be coming up to him, unfortunately, and telling him that. Somebody should have. One of the coaches up in the booth, Pete, should have been saying in his ear, hey, coach, we got 2. Let's use one. Let's burn one right now. Come on. And all he could do is tell him to shut up. But
Right.
The problem is, those guys know that their jobs are probably gone because whoever they bring in is going to bring in his own coaches next year. So they're already out there thinking about next year, Pete. That's one of the problems when you're losing like this and you've got a coach who's temporary sitting in the driver's seat. I like him. I think he's a great guy. I didn't like the ex-Steelers coach. I didn't like his take, Pete, and I didn't think it was offensive that he did this, but I think it was something that he's basically a place card holder. I don't think that the ownership, Irsay and those guys, intended for him to be the long-term coach. I don't even know if he wants to be the long-term coach, but he was probably flattered to go out there and do this with his drinking buddy, Irsay.
Well, and John, and let's be honest. If it's you or I'm going. Oh, hell yeah, I'm going to take over. If they say, hey, Pete, you know what? You coached a little bit here and there. You played for a long time. We'd like you to come in and fill in at this team at the University of X, whatever. I'm in. I'm taking it, just like this guy did. But hopefully I would do a little bit better job of understanding, you know what? We need to do this with the ball. We need to run the ball. We need to use the timeouts. We've got to do this, that, and the other. And like you say, hopefully the rest of the staff is on board and they're actually helping out saying, hey, look, this is what we've got to do. We got to call a timeout, man. We got to do this. We got to do that. Why don't we give this ball to Jonathan Taylor, for God's sake? He only averages 4 to 5 yards a carry. What the hell? Some of those things are fairly simplistic. And I think both of us would have figured that out. It's too bad that Saturday didn't figure that out because now it's becoming an embarrassment.
Yeah, I agree. Well, hopefully I won't embarrass us, Pete, with my VPN problem tomorrow. But I think I've got it addressed. By the way, I'll be in Miami tomorrow, Pete, for the Players Impact, which is a bunch of pro football players and other sports celebrities in Miami as part of Art Basel this week. So I'll be coming to you guys from there. Pete will be, I don't know, Minnesota or
I'll be in the snow again, man. We got snow, John. We got 6 to 8 coming right now. We might have 3 or 4 already on the ground, and it has no signs of stopping. So
you might be there for a while, in other words.
Yeah. I'm not going anywhere.
Folks, be sure to join us tomorrow, 1 p.m. Eastern time. By the way, I'll be on Fox right after that. We look forward to you guys joining us tomorrow. See you then.